a lifetime of service to others, the embodiment of grace under pressure, the spirit of perseverance honed through the terror of World War II, when people looked to their leaders for courage and inspiration to overcome the face of terror and fear. While still a child at the start of the war, Elizabeth, who would become our Queen, learned from her parents' example about needing to be right there with the people through these times of great terror, and then as she became older during those war years, contributing directly to the war effort as a mechanic in the Auxiliary Territorial Service. Queen Elizabeth, she was enduring but also evolving. As the longest ever reigning British monarch with 70 years of service, she was the most powerful and influential woman leader our world has ever seen. As a constitutional monarch, the power of her reign wasn't with military might, it wasn't with political power, but the influence of her character and unswerving commitment to keep her promise that her life, no matter whether short or long, would be dedicated to the service of others. I honour her life of service and her example. There is a saying which is relevant to all of us, that with privilege comes responsibility. In her case, there was great privilege, though she wasn't born to be Queen. But with that subsequently becoming her destiny, she also undertook extraordinary responsibility, which I think is hard for any of us here to actually imagine. Our time of formal service as elected members of Parliament is something we choose. And how we do it is certainly our choice. And we may continue to serve, I hope, when our time here finishes in this House, and we've seen that with many who will do it without titles or roles. But it is to the honour and respect of Queen Elizabeth II that a role that she subsequently took by birth or later on after birth was one that she took with great seriousness and responsibility and fulfilled with diligence, honour and love. 70 years as the longest-serving monarch saw great times of change and evolution of the empire to the Commonwealth. She was not born to be Queen. Her father was the spare and not the heir. Her uncle, known to the family as David, who was the Prince of Wales and future King Edward, actually, as a point of interest, when he visited Queensland in 1920, also visited this Parliament and stayed in the what is now the Speaker's office, actually literally stayed in this Parliament. As the future king, it caused a buzz visiting Queensland, and even those die-hard Republicans rolled out to welcome the future king. And in this Parliament, he had a travelling companion and also a fellow descendant of Queen Victoria, Louis Mountbatten, who also stayed here in the Parliament. Well, how things had played out differently than the people thought in the 1920s. In 1920, the Prince of Wales gifted a loving cup to this Parliament, a silver loving cup. But the actual cup of office was too weighty for him, and a few years later he abdicated and the crown passed to King George, the younger brother and the father of Princess Elizabeth. In 1952, decades after her uncle's shock abdication and upon the sudden death of her father, Elizabeth, at the tender age of 25, would become Queen. And by her side was her loving husband, Prince Philip, also a descendant of Queen Victoria, and, by the way, the nephew of Louis Mountbatten. So there's interesting strands of history that tie us to this physical place. Prince Philip, a war veteran and a military man, also understood service and dedicated his life to supporting his wife and Queen, as well as using his position to help thousands of young people through the Duke of Edinburgh Awards and many other noble causes and, as we know, significant environmental movements. Together, the Queen and also her late husband now recognise that their positions were there to leave a legacy of good. The evolution, as we've seen, from hundreds of years ago, from the divine rights of kings and queens to what we've come to see, constitutional monarchy, I wish to acknowledge and express my condolences to the Queen's family and to all those who lovingly expressed their support of the legacy that she's left for our nation and for the world.